He disappeared in the dead of winter. The brooks were frozen, the airports almost deserted, and snow disfigured the public statues. The mercury sank in the mouth of the dying day. Oh, all the instruments agree, the day of his death was a dark, cold day. Far from his illness, the wolves ran on through the evergreen forests. The peasant river was untempted by the fashionable quays. By mourning tongues, the death of the poet was kept from his poems. But for him, it was his last afternoon as himself, an afternoon of nurses and rumours. The provinces of his body revolted, the squares of his mind were empty, silence invaded the suburbs, the current of his feeling failed. He became his admirers. Now he is scattered among 100 cities and wholly given over to unfamiliar affections, to find his happiness in another kind of wood and be punished under a foreign code of conscience. The words of a dead man are modified in the guts of the living. But in the importance and noise of tomorrow, when the brokers are roaring like beasts on the floor of the bourse, and the poor have the sufferings to which they are fairly accustomed, and each in the cell of himself is almost convinced of his freedom, a few thousand will think of this day as one thinks of a day when one did something slightly unusual. Oh, all the instruments agree, the day of his death was a dark, cold day. You were silly like us. Your gift survived it all. The parish of rich women, physical decay, yourself. Mad Ireland hurt you into poetry. Now Ireland has her madness and her weather still. For poetry makes nothing happen. It survives in the valley of its saying, where executives would never want to tamper. It flows south from ranches of isolation and the busy griefs, raw towns that we believe and die in. It survives a way of happening, a mouth. Earth, receive an honoured guest. William Yeats is laid to rest. Let the Irish vessel lie, emptied of its poetry. Time that is intolerant of the brave and innocent, and indifferent in a week to a beautiful physique, worships language and forgives everyone by whom it lives, pardons cowardice, conceit, lays its honours at their feet. In the nightmare of the dark, all the dogs of Europe bark, and the living nations wait, each sequestered in its hate. Intellectual disgrace stares from every human face, and the seas of pity lie, locked and frozen in each eye. Follow, poet, follow right to the bottom of the night, with your unconstraining voice, till persuade us to rejoice. With the farming of a verse, make a vineyard of the curse. Sing of human unsuccess in a rapture of distress. In the deserts of the heart, let the healing fountain start. In the prison of his days, teach the free man how to praise. If it form the one landscape that we, the inconstant ones, are consistently homesick for, this is chiefly because it dissolves in water. Mark these rounded slopes with their surface fragrance of time, and beneath a secret system of caves and conduits. Here these springs that spurt out everywhere with a chuckle, each filling a private pool for its fish and carving its own little ravine, whose cliffs entertain the butterfly and the lizard. Examine this region of short distances and definite places. What could be more like mother, or a fitter background for her son, for the nude young male who lounges against a rock displaying his dildo, never doubting that for all his faults he is loved, whose works are but extensions of his power to charm. From weathered outcrop to hilltop temple, from appearing waters to conspicuous fountains, from a wild to a formal vineyard, are ingenious but short steps that a child's wish to receive more attention than his brothers, whether by pleasing or teasing, can easily take. Watch then the band of rivals as they climb up and down their steep stone gennels in twos and threes, sometimes arm in arm, but never, thank God, in step, or engaged on the shady side of a square at midday in voluble discourse, knowing each other too well to think there are any important secrets, unable to conceive a God whose temper tantrums are moral, and not to be pacified by a clever line or a good lay. For, accustomed to a stone that responds, they have never had to veil their faces in awe of a crater whose blazing fury could not be fixed. Adjusted to the local needs of valleys, where everything can be touched or reached by walking, their eyes have never looked into infinite space through the lattice work of a nomad's comb. Born lucky, their legs have never encountered the fungi and insects of the jungle, the monstrous forms and lives with which we have nothing, we like to hope, in common. So, when one of them goes to the bad, the way his mind works remains comprehensible. To become a pimp or deal in fake jewelry or ruin a fine tenor voice for effects that bring down the house could happen to all but the best and the worst of us. That is why, I suppose, the best and worst never stayed here long, but sought immoderate soils where the beauty was not so external, the light less public, and the meaning of life something more than a mad camp. Come, cried the granite wastes, how evasive is your humour, how accidental your kindest kiss, how permanent is death. Saints-to-be slipped away sighing. Come, purred the clays and gravels, on our plains there is room for armies to drill, rivers wait to be tamed, and slaves to construct you a tomb in the grand manner. Soft as the earth is mankind, and both need to be altered. Intendant Caesars rose and left, slamming the door. But the really reckless were fetched by an older, colder voice, the oceanic whisper. I am the solitude that asks and promises nothing. That is how I shall set you free. There is no love, there are only the various envies, all of them sad. They were right, my dear. All those voices were right and still are. This land is not the sweet home that it looks, nor its peace the historical calm of a site where something was settled once and for all. A backward and dilapidated province connected to the big busy world by a tunnel with a certain seedy appeal. Is that all it is now? Not quite. It has a worldly duty which, in spite of itself, it does not neglect, but calls into question all the great powers assume. It disturbs our rights. The poet, admired for his earnest habit of calling the sun, his mind puzzle, is made uneasy by these solid statues which so obviously doubt his anti-mythological myth. And these gamins pursuing the scientist down the tiled colonnade with such lively offers rebuke his concern for nature's remotest aspects. I too am reproached for what and how much you know. Not to lose time, not to get caught, not to be left behind, not pleased to resemble the beasts who repeat themselves, or a thing like water or stone whose conduct can be predicted. These are our common prayer, whose greatest comfort is music, which can be made anywhere, is invisible, and does not smell. Insofar as we have to look forward to death as a fact, no doubt we are right. But if sins can be forgiven, if bodies rise from the dead, these modifications of matter into innocent athletes and gesticulating fountains made solely for pleasure make a further point. The blessed will not care what angle they are regarded from, having nothing to hide. Dear, I know nothing of either, but when I try to imagine a a faultless love or the life to come. What I hear is the murmur of underground streams. What I see is a limestone landscape. Quarter of pleasures where the rich are always waiting, waiting expensively for miracles to happen. O little restaurant where the lovers eat each other, cafe where exiles have established a malicious village. You with your charm and your apparatus have abolished the strictness of winter and the spring's compulsion. Far from your lights the outraged punitive father, the dullness of mere obedience here is apparent. Yet with orchestras and glances, oh, you betray us to belief in our infinite powers, and the innocent, unobservant offender falls in a moment, victim to the heart's invisible furies. In unlightened streets you hide away the appalling, factories where lives are made for a temporary use, like collars or chairs, rooms where the lonely are battered slowly like pebbles into fortuitous shapes. But the sky you illumine, your glow is visible far into the dark countryside, the enormous, the frozen, where, hinting at the forbidden like a wicked uncle, night after night to the farmer's children you beckon. Here are all the captivities. The cells are as real, but these are unlike the prisoners we know, who are outraged or pining or wittily resigned, or just wish all away. For they dissent so little, so nearly content with the dumb play of the dog, the licking and rushing. The bars of love are so strong, their conspiracies weak like the vows of drunkards. Indeed, their strangeness is difficult to watch. The condemned see only the fallacious angels of a vision. So little effort lies behind their smiling, the beast of vocation is afraid. But watch them. Oh, set against our size and timing, the almost neuter, the slightly awkward perfection. For the sex is there, the broken bootlace is broken, the professor's dream is not true. Yet the tyranny is so easy. The improper word scribbled upon the fountain, is that all the rebellion? The storm of tears shed in the corner, are these the seeds of the new life? Wrapped in a yielding air, beside the flower's soundless hunger, close to the tree's clandestine tide, close to the bird's high fever, loud in his hope and anger, erect about his skeleton, stands the expressive lover, stands the deliberate man. Beneath the hot and curious sun, past stronger beasts and fairer, he picks his way, a living gun, with gun and lens and Bible, a militant inquirer, the friend, the rash, the enemy, the essayist, the able at times to cry. The friendless and unhated stone lies everywhere about him, the brothered one, the not alone, the brothered and the hated, whose family have taught him to set against the large and dumb, the timeless and the rooted, his money and his time. For mother's fading hopes become dull wives to his dull spirits, soon dulled by nurse's moral thumb, that dullard fond betrayer, and childish he inherits, so soon by legal father tricked, the tall and gorgeous tower, gorgeous but locked, and ruled by dead men never met, by pious guests deluded, upon the stool of madness set, or stool of desolation, sits murderous and clear-headed. Enormous beauties round him move, for grandiose is his vision, and grandiose his love. Determined on time's honest shield, the lamb must face the tigress, their faithful quarrel never healed. Though faithless, he consider his dream of vaguer ages, hunter and victim reconciled, the lion and the adder and the child. Fresh loves betray him, every day over his green horizon, a fresh deserter rides away, and miles away birds mutter of ambush and of treason. To fresh defeats he still must move, to further griefs and greater, and the defeat of grief. As I walked out one evening, walking down Bristol Street, the crowds upon the pavement were fields of harvest wheat, and down by the brimming river I heard a lover sing under an arch of the railway. Love has no ending. I love you, dear, I love you, till China and Africa meet, and the river jumps over the mountain, and the salmon sing in the street. I love you till the ocean is folded and hung up to dry, and the 7 stars go squawking like geese about the sky. The years shall run like rabbits, for in my arms I hold the flower of the ages and the first love of the world. But all the clocks in the city began to whir and chime. Oh, let not time deceive you, you cannot conquer time. In the burrows of the nightmare, where justice naked is, time watches from the shadow and coughs when you would kiss. In headaches and in worry, vaguely life leaks away, and time will have his fancy tomorrow or today. Into many a green valley drifts the appalling snow. Time breaks the threaded dances and the diver's brilliant bow. Oh, plunge your hands in water, plunge them in up to the wrist. Stare, stare in the basin, and wonder what you've missed. The glacier knocks in the cupboard, the desert sighs in the bed, and the crack in the teacup opens a lane to the land of the dead, where the beggars raffle the banknotes, and the giant is enchanting to Jack, and the lily-white boy is Aurora, and Jill goes down on her back. Oh, look, look in the mirror, oh, look in your distress. Life remains a blessing, although you cannot bless. Oh, stand, stand at the window as the tears scald and start. You shall love your crooked neighbor with your crooked heart. It was late, late in the evening. The lovers, they were gone. The clocks had ceased their chiming, and the deep river ran on. Jumbled in the common box of their dark stupidity, Orchid, Swan, and Caesar lie. Time that tires of everyone has corroded all the locks, thrown away the key for fun. In its cleft the torrent mocks prophets who in day gone by made a profit on each cry, persona grata now with none, and a jackassed language shocks poets who can only pun. Silence settles on the clocks, nursing mothers point a sly index finger at a sky crimson with the setting sun. In the valley of the Fox gleams the barrel of a gun. Once we could have made the docks, now it is too late to fly. Once too often you and I did what we should not have done. Round the rampant, rugged rocks, rude and ragged rascals run. Seen when night is silent, the bean-shaped island, and our ugly comic servant who was observant. Oh, the veranda and the fruit, the tiny steamer in the bay, startling summer with its hoot. You have gone away. My dear one is mine as mirrors are lonely, as the poor and sad are real to the good king, and the high green hill sits always by the sea. Up jumped the black man behind the elder tree. turned a somersault and ran away waving. My dear one is mine, as mirrors are lonely. The witch gave a squawk, her venomous body melted into light as water leaves a spring, and the high green hill sits always by the sea. At his crossroads too, the ancient prayed for me. Down his wasted cheeks tears of joy were running. My dear one is mine, as mirrors are lonely. He kissed me awake, and no one was sorry. The sun shone on sails, eyes, pebbles, anything, and the high green hill sits always by the sea. So, to remember our changing garden, we are linked as children in a circle dancing. My dear one is mine, as mirrors are lonely, and the high green hill sits always by the sea. Sing, Ariel, sing, sweetly, dangerously out to the sour and shiftless water, lucidly out to the dozing tree, entrancing, rebuking the raging heart with a smoother song than this rough world, unfeeling God. Oh, brilliantly, lightly, of separation of bodies and death, unanxious one, sing, to man, meaning me, as now, meaning always, in love or out, whatever that mean, trembling he takes the silent passage into discomfort. Be patient, solemn nose, serve in a world of prose the present moment well, nor surlily contrast its brash, ill-mannered smell with grand sense of the past. That calm, enchanted wood, that grave world where you stood so gravely at its middle, its oracle and riddle, has all been altered. Now in anxious times you serve as bridge from mouth to brow, an asymmetric curve thrust outward from a face, time-conscious into space, whose oddness may provoke to a mind-saving joke, a mind that would it wear an apathetic sphere. Point then, for honour's sake, up the storm-beaten slope from memory to hope, the way you cannot take. Be modest, lively ears, spoiled darlings of a stage where any caper cheers the paranoic mind of this undisciplined and concert-going age, so lacking in conviction it cannot take pure fiction, and what it wants from you are rumours partly true. Before you catch its sickness, submit your lucky quickness and levity to rule. Go back again to school, drudge patiently until no whisper is too much, and your precision such at any sound that all seem natural, not one fantastic or banal. And then do what you will. Dance with angelic grace in ecstasy and fun, the luck you cannot place. Be civil hands. On you, although you cannot read, is written what you do, and blows you struck so blindly in temper or in greed, your tricks of long ago, eyes kindly or unkindly, unknown to you, will know. Revere those hairy wrists and leg of mutton fists, which pulverized the trolls and carved deep don'ts in stone. Great hands which under knolls are now disjointed bone. But what has been, has been. A tight arthritic claw or aldermanic paw, waving about in praise of those Homeric days, is impious and obscene. Grow hands into those living hands which true hands should be, by making and by giving to hands you cannot see. Look naked eyes, look straight at all eyes but your own, lest in a tete-a-tete of glances double-crossed, both knowing and both known, your nakedness be lost. Rove curiously about, but look from inside out. Compare two eyes you meet by dozens on the street, one shameless, one ashamed, too lifeless to be blamed, with eyes met now and then, looking from living men, which in Petrarchan fashion play opposite the heart, their humour to her passion, her nature to their art, for mutual undeceiving. True seeing is believing what sight can never prove. There is a world to see. Look outward eyes and love, those eyes you cannot be. Praise tongue the earthly muse, by number and by name, in any style you choose. For nimble tongues and lame have both found favour. Praise her port and sudden ways, now fishwife and now queen, her reason and unreason. Though freed from that machine, praise her revolving wheel of appetite and season. In honour of another, the old self you become at any drink or meal, that animal of taste. And of his twin, your brother, unlettered, savage, dumb, down there below the waist. Although your style be fumbling, half stutter and half song, give thanks, however bumbling, telling for her dear sake, to whom all styles belong, the truth she cannot make. Be happy, precious five, so long as I'm alive, nor try to ask me what you should be happy for. Think, if it helps, of love or alcohol or gold, but do as you are told. I could, which you cannot, find reasons fast enough to face the sky and roar in anger and despair at what is going on, demanding that it name whoever is to blame. The sky would only wait till all my breath was gone, and then reiterate, as if I wasn't there, that singular command I do not understand. Bless what there is for being, which has to be obeyed, for what else am I made for? Agreeing or disagreeing? Deep below our violences, quite still, lie our first dad, his watch, and many little maids. But the boneless winds that blow round Law Court and Temple recall to Metropolis that Pliocene Friday when, at his holy insufflation, had he picked a teleost or an arthropod to inspire, would our death also have come? One bubble-brained creature said, I am loved, therefore I am. And well by now might the lion be lying down with the kid, had it stuck to that logic. Winds make weather. Weather is what nasty people are nasty about, and the nice show a common joy in observing. When I seek an image for our authentic city, across what brigs of dread, down what gloomy galleries must we stagger or crawl before we may cry, oh look. I see old men in hallways tapping their barometers, or a lawn over which the first thing after breakfast a paterfamilias hurries to inspect his rain gauge. Goddess of winds and wisdom, when on some windless day of dejection, unable to name or to structure, your poet with bodily tics, scratching, tapping his teeth, tugging the lobe of an ear, unconsciously invokes you, show your good nature, allow rooster or whistling maid to fetch him Arthur a bower. Then, if moon-faced nonsense that erudite forger stalk through the 7 kingdoms, set your poplars a shiver to warn your clerk lest he die like an old believer for some spurious reading. And in all winds, no matter which of your 12 he may hear, equinox gales at midnight howling through marram grass, or a faint susurration of pines on a cloudless afternoon in midsummer, let him feel you present, that every verbal rite may be fittingly done, and done in anamnesis of what is excellent, yet a visible creature. Earth, sky, a few dear names. Sylvan meant savage in those primal woods Piero di Cosimo so loved to draw, where nudes, bears, tigers, sows with women's heads, mounted and murdered and ate each other raw, nor thought the lightning-kindled bush to tame, but, flabbergasted, fled the useful flame. Reduced to patches owned by hunting squires of villages with ovens and stocks, they whispered still of most unsocial fires. Though crown and mitre warned their silly flocks, the pastures humdrum rhythms to approve, and to abhor the license of the grove. Guilty intention still looks for a hotel that wants no details and surrenders none. A wood is that, and throws in charm as well, and many a semi-innocent undone has blamed its nightingales, who round the deed sang with such sweetness of a happy greed. Those birds, of course, did nothing of the sort. And as for sylvan nature, if you take a snapshot at a picnic, oh, how short and lower ordersy the gang will look by those vast lives that never took another and are not scared of gods, ghosts, or stepmother. Among these coffins of its by and by, the public can, it cannot on a coast, bridle its skirt and bargain-chasing eye. And where should an austere philologist relax but in the very world of shade from which the matter of his field was made? Old sounds re-educate an ear grown coarse, as Pan's green father suddenly raps out a burst of undecipherable Morse, and cuckoos mock in Welsh, and doves create in rustic English over all they do to rear their modern family of two. Now here, now there, some loosened element, a fruit in vigour or a dying leaf, utters its private idiom for dissent, and late man, listening to his latter grief, hears close or far the oldest of his joys, exactly as it was, the water noise. A well-kept forest begs Our Lady's grace. Someone is not disgusted, or at least is laying bets upon the human race, retaining enough decency to last. The trees encountered on a country stroll reveal a lot about that country's soul. A small grove massacred to the last ash, an oak with heart rot, give away the show. This great society is going smash. They cannot fool us with how fast they go, how much they cost each other and the gods. A culture is no better than its woods. I know a retired dentist who only paints mountains, but the masters seldom care that much, who sketch them in beyond a holy face or a highly dangerous chair, while a normal eye perceives them as a wall between worse and better, like a child scolded in France who wishes he were crying on the Italian side of the Alps. Caesar does not rejoice when high ground makes a darker map, nor does Madame. Why should they? A serious being cries out for a gap. And it is curious how often in steep places you meet someone short who frowns, a type you catch beheading daisies with a stick. Small crooks flourish in big towns, but perfect monsters, remember Dracula, are bred on crags in castles. Those unsmiling parties clumping off at dawn in the gear of their mystery for points up are a bit alarming. They have the balance, nerve, and habit of the spiritual. But what God does their order serve? A civil man is a citizen. Am I to see in the Lake District then another bourgeois invention like the piano? Well, I won't. How can I, when I wish I stood now on a platform at Penrith, Zurich, or any junction at which you leave the express for a local that swerves off soon into a cutting. Soon tunnels begin, red farms disappear, hedges turn to walls, cows become sheep, you smell peat or pine wood, you hear your first waterfalls. And what looked like a wall turns out to be a world with measurements of its own and a style of gossip. To manage the flesh, when angels of ice and stone stand over her day and night, who make it so plain they detest any kind of growth, does not encourage euphemisms for the effort. Here, wayside crucifixes bear witness to a physical outrage, and serenades, too, stick to bare fact. Oh, my girl has a goiter, I've a hole in my shoe. Dower, still a fine refuge. The boy behind his goats has the round skull of a clan that fled with bronze before a tougher metal. And the quiet old gentleman with a cheap room at the Black Eagle used to own 3 papers, but is not received in society now. These farms can always see a panting government coming. I'm Nordic myself, but even so I'd much rather stay where the nearest person who could have me hung is some ridges away. To be sitting in privacy, like a cat on the warm roof of a loft, where the high-spirited sun of some gloomy tarn comes sprinting down through a green croft bright with flowers, laid out in exquisite splodges like a Chinese poem, while, near enough, a real darling is cooking a delicious lunch, would keep me happy for what? 5 minutes? For an uncat-like creature who has gone wrong, 5 minutes on even the nicest mountain is awfully long. A lake allows an average father walking slowly to circumvent it in an afternoon, and any healthy mother to halloo the children back to her bedtime from their games across. Anything bigger than that, like Michigan or Baikal, though potable, is an estranging sea. Lake folk require no fiend to keep them on their toes. They leave aggression to ill-bred romantics who duel with their shadows over blasted heaths. A month in a lacustrine atmosphere would find the fluvial rivals waltzing, not exchanging the rhyming insults of their great-great-uncles. No wonder Christendom did not get really started, till, scarred by torture, white from caves and jails, her pensive chiefs converged on the Ascanian lake, and by that stork-infested shore invented the life of Godhead, making Catholic the figure of 3 small fishes in a triangle. Sly foreign ministers should always meet beside one, for whether they walk widdershins or diesel, its path will yoke their shoulders to one liquid centre, like 2 old donkeys pumping as they plod. Such physical compassion may not guarantee a marriage for their armies, but it helps. Only a very wicked or conceited man, about to sink somewhere in mid-Atlantic, could think Poseidon's frown was meant for him in person. But it is only human to believe the little lady of the glacier lake has fallen in love with the rare bather whom she drowns. The drinking water of the city, where one panics at nothing noticing how real one is, may come from reservoirs whose guards are all too conscious of being followed. Webster's cardinal saw in a fishpool something horrid with a hayrake. I know a Sussex hammer pond like that. A haunted lake is sick, though. Normally, they doctor our tactile fevers with a visual world where beaks are dumb like bows and faces safe like houses. The water scorpion finds it quite unticklish, and though it shudders slightly when caressed by boats, it never asks for water or a loan. Liking one's nature, as lake lovers do, benign, goes with a wish for savage dogs and man-traps. One fall, one dispossession is enough, I'm sorry. Why should I give Lake Eden to the nation just because every mortal Jack and Jill has been the genius of some amniotic mere? It is unlikely I shall ever keep a swan or build a tower on any small tombolo, but that's not going to stop me wondering which sort of lake I would decide on if I should. Moraine, pot, Oxbow, Glint, Sink, Crater, Piedmont, Dimple. Just reeling off their names is ever so comfy. Old saints on millstones float with cats to islands out at sea, whereon no female pelvis can threaten their agape. Beyond the long arm of the law, close to a shipping road, pirates in their island lairs observe the pirate code. Obsession with security in sovereigns prevails. His Highness and the people both pick islands for their jails. Once, where detected worldlings now do penitential jobs, exterminated species played who had not read their Hobbes. His continental damage done, laid on an island shelf, Napoleon has 5 years more to talk about himself. How fascinating is that class whose only member is me. Sappho, Tiberius, and I hold forth beside the sea. What is cozier than the shore of a lake turned inside out? How do all these other people dare to be about? In democratic nudity their sexes lie, except by age or weight you could not tell the keeping from the kept. They go, she goes, thou goest, I go, to a mainland livelihood. Farmer and fisherman complain, the other has it good. I can imagine quite easily ending up in a decaying port on a desolate coast, cadging drinks from the unwary, a quarrelsome, disreputable old man. I can picture a second childhood in a valley, scribbling reams of edifying and unreadable verse. But I cannot see a plain without a shudder. Oh God, please, please don't ever make me live there. It's horrible to think what peaks come down to, that pecking rain and squelching glacier defeat tall pomps of stone where goddesses lay sleeping, dreaming of being woken by some chisel's kiss. But what those blind brutes leave when they are through is nothing but a mere substance, a clay that meekly takes the potter's cup, a gravel that, as concrete, will unsex any space which it encloses. And think of growing where all else wares are equal. So long as there's a hill ridge somewhere, the dreamer can place his land of marvels. In poor valleys, orphans can head downstream to seek a million. Here, nothing points. To choose between art and science, an embryo genius would have to spin a stick. What could these farms do if set loose, but drift like clouds? What goal of unrest is there but the navy? Romance? Not in this weather. Ovid's charmer who leads the quadrilles in Arcady, boy lord of hearts who can call their yes and no their own, would, madcap that he is, soon die of cold or sunstroke. These lives are in firmer hands. That old grim she who makes the blind dates for the hapless genera creates their country matters. Woe to the childbed, woe to the strawberries if she's in her moods. And on these attend, greedy as foul and harsher than any climate, Caesar with all his they. If a tax collector disappear on the hills, if now and then a keeper is shot in the forest, no thunder follows. But where roads run level, how swift to the point of protest strides the crown. It hangs, it flogs, it fines, it goes. There is drink, there are wives to beat, but Zeus is with the strong. Born as a rule in some small place, an island quite often, where a smart lad can spot the bluff whence cannon would put the harbour at his mercy. But it's here they chamber with Clio. At this ditch the Christian crossbow stopped the heathen scimitar. Here is a windmill whence an emperor saw his right wing crumple. Across these cabbage fields a pretender's light horse made their final charge. If I were a plainsman, I should hate us all, from the mechanic rioting for a cheap lope to the fastidious palate. Hate the painter who steals my wrinkles for his 12 apostles. Hate the priest who cannot even make it shower. What could I smile at as I trudged behind my harrow, but bloodshot images of rivers screaming, marbles in panic, and don't care made to care. As it is, though, I know them personally only as a landscape common to two nightmares. Across them, spotted by spiders from afar, I have tried to run, knowing there was no hiding and no hope. On them, in brilliant moonlight, I have lost my way, and stood without a shadow at the dead centre of an abominable desolation, like Tarquin ravished by his post-coital sadness. Which goes to show I have reason to be frightened, not of plains, of course, but of me. I should like, who wouldn't, to shoot beautifully and be obeyed. I should also like to own a cave with 2 exits. I wish I weren't so silly. Though I can't pretend to think these flats poetic, it's as well at times to be reminded that nothing is lovely, not even in poetry, which is not the case. Dear water, clear water, playful in all your streams, as you dash or loiter through life, who does not love to sit beside you, to hear you and see you, pure being, perfect in music and movement? Air is boastful at times, earth slovenly, fire rude, but you in your bearing are always immaculate, the most well-spoken of all the older servants in the household of Mrs. Nature. Nobody suspects you of mocking him, for you still use the same vocables you were using that day before that unexpected row which downed every hod on half-finished Babel, and still talk to yourself. Nowhere are you disliked. Arching your torso, you dive from a basalt sill, canter across white chalk, slog forward through red marls, the aboriginal pilgrim, at home in all sections, but for whom we should be idolaters of a single rock, kept apart by our landscapes, excluding as alien the tales and diets of all other strata. How could we love the absent one if you did not keep coming from a distance, or quite directly assist, as when past Isolde's tower you floated the willow pash notes of wanted Tristram? And Homo Ludens surely is your child, who make fun of our feuds by opposing identical banks, and transferring the loam from Huppim to Muppim and back each time you crankle. Growth cannot add to your song. As unchristened brooks, already you whisper to ants what, as Brahma's son descending his titanic staircase into Assam, to Himalayan bears you thunder. And not even man can spoil you. His company coarsens roses and dogs. Yet should he herd you through a sluice to toil at a turbine, or keep you leaping in gardens for his amusement, innocent still is your outcry water, and there even to his soiled heart raging at what it is, speaks of a sort of world quite other, altogether different from this one with its envies and passports. A polis like that to which, in the name of scholars everywhere, Gaston Paris pledged his allegiance as Bismarck's siege guns came within earshot. Lately, in that dale of all Yorkshire's, the loveliest, where off its fell side helter-skelter Kisden Beck jumps into swale with a joyous shouting, sprawled out on grass, I dozed for a second, and found myself following a croquet tournament in a calm enclosure with thrushes popular. Of all the players in that cool valley, the best with the mallet was my darling. while on the wolds that begirdled it, wild old men hunted with spades and hammers, monomaniac each for a megalith or a fossil, and bird watchers stalked the mossy beech woods. Suddenly, over the lawn we started to run, for lo, through the trees, in a cream and golden coach, drawn by two baby locomotives, the god of mortal doting approached us. Flanked by his bodyguard, those hairy armatures in green, who laugh at thunderstorms and weep at a blue sky. He thanked us for our cheers of homage, and promised X and Y a passion undying. With a wave of his torch he commanded a dance. So round in a ring we flew, my dear on my right, when I awoke. But fortunate seemed that day because of my dream, and enlightened, and dearer water than ever your voice, as if, glad, though goodness knows why, to run with the human race, wishing, I thought, the least of men their figures of splendor, their holy places.